Welcome to Minnesota Candidates Speak Out. I'm your host, Max Reimer. We have an election coming up in just about a month, and all eyes are on the top of the ticket, but we have some really critical local races to pay attention to as well. Today we have Richfield City Council candidate Gordon Vizecky. Gordon, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
You just came from a League of Women Voters Forum.
Yeah, it was really exciting to see the spectrum of ideas that were discussed. Not a debate style, but just the interaction and candidates really coming forward with what their thoughts are in the community.
So tell us a little bit about you, your professional background, why you decided to get into this race.
So I actually grew up in small town Minnesota, more cows than people, and found my way in the Twin Cities going to law school. Settled in Richfield. My wife and I, and at the time our one-year-old son, bought a house in Richfield. We've been there 20 years, or a little over 20 years. And what sort of got me involved in the city was not more than 3 weeks after moving into town, my wife and I had left. We were working at the same place. We drove home and something was off. And we, after some pondering, figured out that our other car was gone.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So we did some sleuthing, figured out it had gotten towed. There was a snow ordinance that we had no idea existed. And it's illegal to park on any Richfield City street after 3 inches of snow. So when we left, it had just started. When we came back, our car was gone. And I figured out, in that January, so just a few weeks later, that the city commissions were seeking applicants. And I was pretty steamed about having been towed and ticketed.
That'll do it.
Yeah, that. So I decided that, I should get involved. I'm sort of an involved person by nature. I would have gotten involved naturally, but, a tow and a ticket will inspire faster action. So I then spent 6 years on the city's Parks and Rec Commission, or it's also called Community Services Commission, and then was asked to move up to the Planning Commission. So I spent 3 terms on the Planning Commission. So all in all, 18 years of experience on city commissions. And I knew that there was going to be an upcoming retirement of one of the council members who covered my ward. And it was also at a time when my kids were moving on. So my oldest is a senior at the U, my youngest is a senior in high school in Richfield, and some of my volunteer obligations were changing. And I thought, this is the perfect opportunity to get involved, in part because I didn't really see a diversity of opinion on the city council. There's a lot of 5-0 voting and not a lot of discussion. So I really see it's my opportunity to provide input. I've got a willingness to participate. I have a flexible employer, and it's just city politics is really where the rubber meets the road.
Absolutely.
There's so much focus on national races, national elections, and even state elections, but the national election isn't going to influence what the housing and transportation character of your city and neighborhood are.
That's right.
It's not going to influence what the city infrastructure looks like. So it's the most meaningful impact that I think folks can have.
So being involved, and you've been a resident for 20 years, you've been involved, relatively speaking, with government in Richfield for 18 years, as you mentioned. A lot probably has changed in that amount of time. What kind of issues are you seeing bubble to the surface right now as you run? Well,
so one of the things that's happening is there's more money for residential development, for multi-unit residential development. In part, so if one thinks about how developers work by, they make money building stuff, and there just isn't an appetite right now in the market, and hasn't been for the last several years, for office and retail space. So the focus is really turned to multifamily housing. And it's a perennial issue around affordability and around what those apartments or multifamily locations look like. But the other issue is, what do we do with the aging locations that are already there? And in my mind, Richfield, as a reaction to one of the larger complexes in our community that was rehabbed and basically upscaled, there was a reaction that happened because of resident displacement. And it is, in many ways, tragic when there is an upgrade and people are displaced. But the city government's reaction to that was to create protections to ensure that it was harder to sell properties and then harder to do upgrades to properties if that upgrade could result in people being displaced. So it was a solution, but in the end, what it does is it locks in the condition, and in many cases, just terrible conditions in some of those aged apartment structures or multi-unit structures. It locks that in while from a Met Council direction perspective, the city is building and planning for more residents and essentially adding more units. So we're adding new units, but we're not actually rehabbing the old ones. So we're not lifting everybody up. We're actually perpetrating a greater harm on those folks who are living there.
Gordon, you made mention about having somewhat of a differing opinion with the City Council and bringing kind of a fresh voice to things. With the last minute or so here, what do you hope to bring to this position, and how can people kind of get involved and learn more about your candidacy?
What I really hope to do is minimize the conflict between development and residents. There have been a couple of recent projects where apartment buildings had reduced parking requirements that actually pushed a lot of those cars out into the street. And coming from my own personal experience of getting towed, I know that not having enough parking
is personal.
Is going to be it's going to be a problem. It's not fair to the residents who have lived in that area, and it's not fair to the new folks who are living in the apartment building. So for those folks who want to find out more about my campaign, vote the number 4 Gordon.org.
And people can start voting right now, right?
There's active voting going on right now. I've been speaking with constituents in the ward, and they've already voted, and they're really excited about it. So yes, early voting works, mail-in voting works, or if you want, you can wait until November 3rd.
Well, Gordon, thank you so much for being willing to throw your hat in the ring for this, and we wish you all the best, and we hope you'll join us again after you're elected.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I'm your host, Max Reimer. Make sure you get out and vote. Until next time.